They warned me never to open the basement door, but when I finally did, the smell hit me like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from the moment I moved into that old house on the edge of town. The basement always felt different, and not in a good way. Neighbors would cross the street to avoid it, and even my family seemed uneasy whenever the subject came up. Don't go near that basement, they warned. That smell is like death itself. At first, I thought it was just an exaggeration, or maybe the house was simply old and dusty. But the warnings were persistent, coming from everyone, my landlord, the neighbors, even a few strangers who knew the house's history. The smell was something else entirely. It was hard to describe, but it hit you the second you got close to the basement door. Imagine the worst possible stench, a mix of rot, decay, and something almost unnatural. It wasn't just the smell of a dead animal or mold. It was heavier, almost thick in the air, like it clung to your skin and seeped into your bones. Walking past the door, I could feel the cold air seeping out, carrying that dreadful scent down the hallway. Sometimes when the wind shifted, the smell would sneak under my bedroom door at night, making me gag and choke. Despite all this, there was a strange pull, a mixture of fear and curiosity I couldn't explain. I kept asking myself, what could be causing that smell? The house had been empty for years before I moved in, and no one ever talked about what happened there. Just vague rumors, hushed voices about something terrible hidden deep below. It was almost as if the basement was holding its breath, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets. At night, I'd lie awake wondering what could be down there, but every time I thought about opening that door, a wave of dread stopped me cold. Still, the smell grew stronger, like a silent scream begging to be heard. It wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge, and I knew, deep down, that sooner or later, I'd have to face it the night I finally decided to open the basement door. The house felt colder than usual, as if it knew what was about to happen. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, each beat echoing louder than the last. The warnings, the smell, all of it was still fresh in my mind, but curiosity had clawed its way over fear. I had to see what was down there. I grabbed my phone for light and slowly turned the rusty doorknob. The door creaked open with a groan that seemed to echo down into the depths. The smell hit me instantly, that awful, choking stench, worse than I remembered, like stale death and something far older. I gagged and took a step back, but something pushed me forward, a force I couldn't resist. The wooden stairs were slick with dust and something else I couldn't identify. Each step creaked under my weight, and shadows danced along the damp stone walls, twisting in the weak light. The air was freezing cold, colder than the rest of the house. My breath came out in frosty puffs as I descended further. Halfway down, I noticed strange markings carved into the wood, symbols I didn't recognize, rough and hurried like warnings. A sudden shuffling noise behind me made me whirl around, but there was nothing, just silence, thick and suffocating. As I reached the bottom, the stench was overpowering, making my eyes water. I fumbled with my phone to get a better light and scanned the room. Broken furniture lay scattered, covered in mold and dust. But in the corner, something caught my eye, a dark, wet patch on the floor that looked like dried blood. My stomach twisted. Then came the whispering, soft at first, almost like the wind, but then voices, faint, urgent and filled with panic. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I froze, every muscle tense, the hair on my neck standing on end. The air seemed to pulse, and the darkness pressed closer, swallowing the light. I wanted to run, to climb back up and slam the door shut, but my feet felt rooted. The basement wasn't just a place. It was alive, watching me, waiting for me to find what lay hidden in its depths. And whatever it was, it didn't want to leave as I stood frozen in the suffocating darkness. The whispers grew louder, no longer just vague murmurs, but urgent cries that clawed at my sanity. My phone's weak light flickered, threatening to die, plunging me into total blackness. That's when I saw it. A shape, something dark and twisted lurking just beyond the beam, barely visible but undeniably there. I wanted to convince myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the broken furniture. But the smell told a different story, thick and putrid, more alive than anything I'd ever encountered. I edged forward, the floor cold and damp beneath my fingertips as I traced the source of the smell. What I found made my blood run cold. Strewn across the floor were old bones, too many to count, yellowed and brittle. They were tangled in rotting cloth, remnants of what must have been people long forgotten. It wasn't just the stench of death anymore. It was the proof. The basement was a tomb. Suddenly, a cold breath brushed past my neck. I spun around, but the basement was empty. Or so I thought. The oppressive presence was closing in, a dark force that seemed to seep from the very walls. My skin crawled as I felt unseen eyes watching my every move, waiting for me to slip, to become the next lost soul in that cursed place. Panic surged through me, but my legs refused to obey. It was like the basement had claimed me, holding me hostage in its ghastly grip. I realized then that the smell wasn't just death. It was a warning, a curse. This place was alive with something evil, something that fed on fear and desperation. With every heartbeat, the whispers turned into screams, screams of agony and rage, echoing in my mind. The darkness wasn't just a lack of light. It was a living entity, a prison that swallowed hope and sanity alike. I knew one thing for certain. Some doors are better left unopened, some basements better left unexplored. But it was too late. The basement had me now, and no one would ever hear me scream. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Curiosity can lead us into darkness we are not prepared to face. Respect warnings, and know that some mysteries are better left untouched to protect our peace and sanity. If you want, I can also help you phrase in a shorter, punchier way perfect for your video outro.